You are now watching M.O.D. Entertainment. Make sure you subscribe and check out the playlist.
I grew up hearing gunshots in the late night. Ghetto bird, police sirens as a mother cries. Just another victim of the Soundbrown genocide. Locals posted, locked and loaded, ready to take lives. And when they heard the chieflet, they would duck up out of sight. Like your car when the sundown, it was mission time. You had to stay alert cause bullets always travel blind. We stayed posted, we stayed drinking and we getting high. Marchando down the enemy's neighborhood as we ride. Put the hood, put the glica sample, fuck their side. No regrets, but the truth is no peace of mind.
G-File.
Alright, now starting off right here in Boyle Heights, you have one of the oldest neighborhoods on this side, which is the east side White Fence neighborhood. Now, White Fence is a neighborhood that is large and old school with heavy roots right here within the Boyle Heights area. Now, White Fence does have several different locations throughout Los Angeles, but this is their home ground, their home base, the original zone in which they started in. Now, the White Fence neighborhood has been around since the 1920s, so it's an old school neighborhood. But it is not one of the first gangs or like the originators out of over here in this area, but it is one of the oldest neighborhoods over here. Where they chill at, or their hanging spot, is where it's the iconic bridge that you see in several movies, like the movie Colors, when the two crash units roll up on them and ask if they've seen any gang members around. That is the iconic bridge in which White Fence kicks it at, and it's the spot where they still kick it at till nowadays. But it does have several different locations in which they kick it at, because they do have a lot of cliques, from the Spiders to the whole Locos to the Monsters to all kinds of different cliques, to the Locos, so all kinds of different cliques. And females as well. They have female cliques. They have a lot of females in their neighborhood as well. And yeah, man, this White Fence neighborhood right here, I'm pretty sure everyone heard of White Fence. They're heavily rooted, heavily connected. These guys are with the business, homie. These guys are no chums. They ain't playing, homie. Now, their territory stretches out from what's Soto and like Whittier. So from Soto all the way down to Whittier, all the way to Indiana. And from 7th all the way to Cesar Chavez. So everything that's in the middle is considered White Fence neighborhood. And that's a gigantic amount of territory. That is huge amount of territory. And they do have it on lockdown, because it is the only neighborhood within its area. You know what I mean? That's how large they are and how scattered they are, that just no other little sets could try to pop off right there in their neighborhood. You get what I mean? They do have a lot of enemies, but they do have the numbers to be able to combat these enemies, Like I said, the White Fence is definitely with the business. They ain't no joke. I got a gang of homies out of White Fence, you know what I mean? Shout out to the homie Blue, shout out to Smiley, shout out to Trooper, shout out to Suspect, shout out to Indio, shout out to Chucky, shout out to Stomper, shout out to Stranger, shout out to Smokey, shout out to Youngster, shout out to Psycho, shout out to Chubbs, shout out to all the homies from White Fence that I have right there that be representing, you know what I mean? Like I said, homie, White Fence is definitely with the business, homie. They have their riders, and they definitely be putting it down right there for their barrio and putting it on the map, homie. You know what I mean? But that's what's up with White Fence. Another neighborhood that we have right here is the Primera Flats neighborhood. Now, the Primera Flats neighborhood is one of the original neighborhoods out of the Boyle Heights area. I think roughly around the same time as White Fence, if not even before White Fence. So we're talking about the 1920s, 1919 por ahí, you know what I mean? So that's already old school. Now, Primera's neighborhood was right there on First Street. That's why it's known as Primera Flats, First Street Flats. They were located in the Pico Aliso village housing projects that were torn down obviously by the city. You know what I mean? But even though their projects were torn down, the neighborhood is still around through those back ends, because there were several gangs around that area, but Primera Flats was the largest and heavily established there, you know what I mean? So they weren't just located right there in those projects. They were located throughout all those back streets on First and everything like that, So even when they knocked it down, the neighborhood took a blow to its number wise, but nonetheless it's still a deep neighborhood. And not only that, but they have other locations throughout Los Angeles in which, you know, they're established, but this is the original home of them, you know, where they first started, you know, where it all happened, you know what I mean? So you can still find them right there through those back ends on First and holding it down for their barrio. You know, Primera Flats is an old school big barrio. It is the barrio in which Midget Loco is from, the rapper. You know, go check out his music. He gets down. Yeah, man, this neighborhood is definitely with the business, homie. These guys are no chums, no pushovers. They're definitely be holding it down. You know, I got a few homies out of Primera Flats, and man, they with the business. They riders, you know what I mean? Shout out to C's. Shout out to Machete. Shout out to all the homies from Primera Flats that be holding it down right there, you know what I mean, for that PF gang. You know, these guys are definitely, you know, holding it down for their barrio. But that's what's up with Primera Flats. And since we're already here, we're gonna stay here in the Pico Aliso Village projects, which you have the TMC neighborhood. Now the TMC neighborhood is a neighborhood that was right here also in the Pico Aliso Village projects. They were a tagging crew that became a neighborhood, roughly started since the 80s. They were a pretty old school tag banging crew, you know, it stood for the mob crew. And not to be confused with the Magicians, there's two different neighborhoods. One's in West LA. This is the ones in Boyle Heights, so the East LA Aliso Village TMC neighborhood. Well, they used to have larger numbers when the projects were up. Now they're a little bit more smaller than they used to be, but nonetheless, homie, they be right there representing and holding it down for their neighborhood, you know, putting it on the map still, you know what I mean? Even though they tore down the projects, you can still find them through those back ends, like on Grande, you know, where they'll still be located at and running around and running amok, you know. The TMC, even though they're a lot smaller, these guys, you know, chunks, you know, pushovers, you know what I mean? They be representing it and holding it down still for their barrio, you know, and definitely putting it on the map for that TMC gang. And that's what's up with the mob crew. Now, don't get it confused. Just because it's the mob crew, they mean as in mob, as in like a group of, like, you know, mobsters, and then crew as in your bunch. But that's what's up with the TMC neighborhood. Now, another neighborhood that you have right here in the Pico Aliso housing village projects is the Clarence neighborhood. Now, the Clarence neighborhood was a pretty large neighborhood right here in the projects next to Primera. It was probably like the next one that was large in size. Clarence is definitely with the business. You can find them through those back ends, through those back alleys on Clarence. Like I said, they were a lot larger before. They're a lot smaller now, due to, you know, them knocking down the projects and that area just being compact with so many different neighborhoods. But nonetheless, Clarence is still up. They still be representing. They were already right there established since the 70s. So, you know, pretty old school neighborhood. I was told the late 60s, early 70s. So already a pretty old school neighborhood that Clarence is. You know, like I said, they used to be deep. They're not as deep no more. But nonetheless, homie, they still have a presence right there. Clarence is still with the business. They still up and be representing and holding it down for their barrio. You know, I got a few homies out of Clarence as well, you know what I mean? Shout out to Big Sleeps, as the homie right there, the Big Sleepy. But yeah, shout out to all the homies from Clarence that still be holding it down through those back ends and putting their barrio on the map, you feel me? But that's what's up with the Clarence Street Locals gang right there. Now moving on to a different project set, you have the 4th Street Flats. Now 4th Street Flats, you know, standing for Cuatro Flats. You see it either 4th Street Flats, or you see it, you know, CX4, meaning Cuatro Flats. You know, flats meaning projects. They're the projects that are located right there on 4th Street. A little bit nicer now, you know, they're gated at now compared to before. But 4th Street right there be with the business, homie. This was another large neighborhood that was definitely with the business. You know, these guys were no pushovers, no chumps. You know, these guys definitely used to hold it down right there. Now, they're not as large as they used to be because of all the racketeering acts and all the sweeps that were done to them. But they definitely with the business, homie. This is the neighborhood that rapper Big Locote is from High Power. Well, he used to be from High Power, and he's from a Satan Asylum. This is his barrio where he's from. And they're different from the Primera Flats, you know what I mean? These are the 4th Street Flats, you know, where the 4th Street projects were at, well, where still are at. And right there on 4th Street, you know what I mean? And they definitely, homie, be right there still holding it down and representing for theirs and putting their barrio on the map, you feel me? That's what's up with the Cuatro Flats gang right there. Now, another old school neighborhood right here in Boyle Heights that's heavily rooted, definitely with the business that people hear about. Also, because they came out in the movie American Me, you have the Big Hazard Gang. So the Hazard Grande neighborhood. Now, Hazard Grande is definitely an old school neighborhood. Already been right here for a cool minute. You know what I mean? I was told that they've been here since the 30s, late 20s, early 30s as well. Is when the Hazard Grande neighborhood was established. They definitely with the business. They run all of the Ramona Gardens projects. So the Ramona Gardens project is their turf. You know what I mean? It's for where Soto and Lancaster is, you know, like where you like hit their zone already, you know. But you can find them throughout those back ends. They run a gigantic chunk of territory as well, you know what I mean? And they still have their projects nowadays on lockdown. You know, these guys are definitely with the business. These guys ain't no chumps. You know, the Hazard Grande, you know, is the neighborhood that, like I said, homie, they heavily large in numbers, definitely with, you know, with the function, with the activity. You definitely hear about them. One of the neighborhoods that definitely gives law enforcement a hard time over here in this side. Yeah, they definitely right there holding it down for their barrio and putting it on the map. You know, these guys ain't no chumps, ain't no pushovers. You can find them still right there holding it down, representing still large in numbers. You know, even though all the sweeps and all that has happened, hasn't been able to slow down this neighborhood. And that's just what's up with the Hazard Grande gang. You know, these guys ain't no chumps, ain't no pushovers. You come over your trip and they gonna handle business. Shout out to my cousin Chuk, right there, Chuco, putting it down for the, you know, Big Hazard Grande Rifa right there, you know. But shout out to all the homies from Hazard right there that be representing. Now, another neighborhood right here on the east side that you have is the Barrio V&E gang. Now, V&E is located right there in Boyle Heights with, you know, heavy ties and roots to the Boyle Heights area. You can find them through the Estrada Court projects. So right there where it's Olympic and Lorena, all the way to Grande Vista, to 8th, is where their neighborhood's at, throughout the courts, you know what I mean? It's a pretty large, you know, project unit sets, you know what I mean? The reason why they're so large in numbers is because, you know, projects just keep producing members. And not only that, not only in the project you can find them, but you can find them throughout those back ends, you know, what's Hunter Street, Estrada Street, you know, just throughout the area you can find the V&E neighborhood, you know what I mean? And they definitely with the business, homie. These guys ain't no chumps, ain't no pushovers, you know what I mean? They definitely have, you know, solid members. I got a gang of homies from V&E as well, and not only that, but they're spread out throughout Los Angeles County, you know what I mean? You could also find them in Lancaster, Montebello, you know. They just have like strongholds, you know, throughout the areas. But this is a home base where they originated at, where they started at, right here in the Boyle Heights area in the Estrada Courts. You know, they definitely, like I said, homie, they with the business, homie. These guys ain't no chumps, ain't no pushovers. They definitely, you know, people definitely hear about these guys on this area. They definitely be putting in work, and like I said, they're large in numbers. You know, shout out to the homie Woody, shout out to Jimbo, shout out to Mems, shout out to Smiley, shout out to Drowsy, shout out to G, shout out to Spider, shout out to all the homies from V&E, you know what I mean? You know, it's where my suegros from, so you know what I mean? I know a gang of them homies, you know. Been right there drunk many nights with them. Yeah, but shout out to all the homies from V&E that are right there representing and holding it down for their barrio, you feel me? Yeah, but that's what's up with the Estrada gang right there. Now, another neighborhood that you have right here in the Boyle Heights area is the A Street gang. Now, the A Street gang is literally right next to V&E's neighborhood, like about 3 feet away from each other. They're located in the Wyvenwood apartment units. They're more like projects, you know what I mean? They're apartment places, but it's more like projects, and it is large. The Wyvenwoods, it's a large housing units. You know, they stretch all the way from Grande Vista and 8th all the way to Soto. So that's a giant amount of territory, you know, which is broken up into several districts. You know, like you have the Granny Lands, the Sandbox, the Tiny Lokes, you know what I mean? And yeah, the A Street gang, homie, is definitely with the business, homie. They're another old school neighborhood that's already been there for a cool while. I was told that they had a good relationship with the Latin Kings before, because they were located around that area. There were several neighborhoods located in that area, but the A Street gang managed to, you know, boot them all out of there, you know, like Lica Los Primos, a few other sets. They do go at it heavily with V&E, you know, considering that they're right next to each other. And with Wyfens. Yeah, but the A Street gang may not be as large as, you know, V&E or Wyfens, but they definitely have the riders that be representing right there for their barrio. You know, they definitely be putting it on the map. You know, you hear about these guys, you know, the Calle Ocho Cheros. You know, I have a few homies from here as well, you know what I mean? Shout out to the homie Little Güero. Shout out to Gallo, shout out to Smiley, shout out to Grizzle, shout out to all the homies from A Street that be right there representing it and holding it down for their barrio. You feel me? Like I said, homie, these guys ain't no chumps, ain't no pushovers, homie. You know, you come over your trip and they gonna lay it down. You know. Now, where you could recognize the neighborhood when you're in the neighborhood, because they have a unique project stage. They're orange with the green doors. You feel me? So that's how you know when it's the Wyvenwood apartment places right there. And yeah, they definitely be roaming around throughout right there, you know, and holding it down and, you know, putting their barrio up on the map. And another neighborhood that you have right here is the Evergreen Gang. Now, the Evergreen Gang is an old school neighborhood as well. Been around since about the 30s as well. You know, you know, it used to be large. It's not as large as it used to be, considering that Wyfens, you know, expanded their territory more up there. You know, where new members getting in and taking crews that joined, you know, the Wyfens, they would just made recruitment a little bit more difficult. And up on the north, on that end of the neighborhood, you know, more people were getting into like the more younger sets like Cam and TMC. You know what I mean? But Evergreen is located right there on Evergreen, obviously. You know, by 3rd and 2nd and all those, you know, through those back ends. But, you know, they still be right there holding it down. You know, I got a few homies from Evergreen as well. And, yeah, man, before they were large, you know what I mean? And even though they're not as large as they used to be, I mean, they still have a presence. And, you know, they still have the riders that be putting their barrio up on the map. You know, Evergreen definitely no joke. You know, the EG neighborhood right here. And, yeah, you know, shout out to the homie Lefty. That's my boy right there, you know, from Evergreen. And shout out to all the homies from Evergreen that be doing their thing still right there representing for their barrio. You know what I mean? But, yeah, that's what's up with the Evergreen Gang right there.